Hello everyone, welcome to Red Snapper. My name's MJ and this is Snap or Pass. Today we are looking at Hydra Bob. We're going to talk to you about all of the awesome mechanics about this card. He's an absolutely crazy one. We're going to give you some absolutely sick deck ideas. Like literally making the decks for this guy made me increase his star rating when I was creating my star rating video, which you may have already seen. And we're going to be looking at the spotlights, counters, all this sort of jazz. So if you're new, please subscribe. But let's kick off without further ado and saying any additional words that we don't need to. Hydra Bob is a 1/4. After each turn, this moves if a player snapped. Before we talk about the card itself and the mechanics, let's look at the spotlight week that he is in. He is featured alongside Nebula, who is a Series 4 card, and Galactus, who is a Series 5 card. I think this week is extremely strong. This is a really good Spotlight Cash week. Apart from the slight drop in value that we have from getting a Series 4 card, in terms of the actual quality of the cards, this seems pretty decent to me. Nebula is one of the best 1-drops in the game. She's absolutely incredible. She's a fantastic, just general 1-cost card because you're able to squeeze out extra power above the typical going rate for a 1-cost card. So she's good from that perspective. But she's also really important as a control card, forcing your opponent to play in a specific location, which can feed into and synergize with other interesting cards like Jean Grey, that I personally really like Nebula in a Kingpin style control-y move deck, where you're playing Nebula and then Jean Grey, and then you're kicking them out of that Jean Grey location with Juggernaut, or you're kicking them around with Stegron and all that sort of thing. But generally speaking, Nebula is a fantastic card. Alongside her, Galactus, Series 5 card. I believe Second Dinner said that he will always be a Series 5 card. He's what they consider to be a big bad, which is basically a massive villain card with a really interesting and unique power. Galactus decks, they can be frustrating to play against, but I think we're kind of I think we're past the toxic era of Galactus, and now if you get Galactus, maybe it's your own fault. Maybe. But hey, if you're new to Galactus and you haven't played him, he's a massive card, he's an epic card, he's very fun to play. So yeah, this is a decent week, and then obviously we'll talk about Hydra Bob and how good Hydra Bob is right now. Let's look at the mechanics around this guy. So, it's important to note that he triggers off of a player snapping, not the automatic cube doubling or bub doubling, as may become important to note as we enter the Deadpool season and Deadpool's diner. So yeah, any effects which automatically snap in the game, he doesn't trigger. It's only when a player snaps. Which, if 4-player ever comes to the game, that would be really, really cool. Hydra Bob will be flying around like a discarded... It's the highest base power 1-cost card with no inherent downside in the game. There are obviously cards with higher power like Titania and Martyr, but they have downsides is maybe the wrong thing to say. I mean, they kind of are. I mean, certainly Martyrs is a downside, but when you're playing those kinds of cards, you are constructing a deck around them as well. So with Titania, you do like the Green Goblin trick. You play on turn 4 Titania into Green Goblin, you double stuff their location, the Oreo edition, and then you can steal it back at the end of the game. You do things like that. Or Martyr, you make sure that your board is filled so she can't move anywhere. But Hydra Bob has no inherent downside really. His power is more of a feature than a downside, I'd say. So yeah, this guy is just really good raw stats. He's a potential key component for Cerebro 4. Very cheap card, obviously he costs 1. And he is the first card to interact with snapping, which is just generally quite interesting. So, pros. Excellent raw stats here. Cards like Ant-Man and Hawkeye, they need support. Sometimes you're playing Ant-Man and because of the way that the game goes, you just can't eke out those extra cards into that location and you're never able to fulfill that extra power, and he's just a 1/1. Maybe you're playing Spectrum, so it becomes a 1/3. But sometimes they can be hard to trigger. Hawkeye, equally, maybe you draw Hawkeye on the final turn of the game. Literally pretty much a dead draw and just a 1 power card. Hydra Bob, not the case. He is coming down as a raw 1/4. That's decent. He moves without you needing to play a card, so it's good for Craven and Miles. We'll obviously talk about more key synergies in a minute when we talk about the decks, But in general, there are some decent synergies that go alongside Bob, and I do think Miles is actually maybe the strongest of all of them. And he can get into difficult locations like Sanctum Sanctorum. We'll come on to this in the cons as well. But yeah, he can sneak into locations, and that can create really interesting situations where he's in a location and your opponent knows that they can get him out of that location. Sorry, I do apologise, I've just made a gender assumption. Whilst most of my viewership are males, not all of them are. So I'd like to say hello to any female or non-binary or other types of what you identify as. Yeah, hello, welcome everyone. Nice to have you all here. But yeah, I'm sorry, I just accidentally presumed that the opponent was a male, and that is absolutely not the case. I do apologise. They may feel like they can snap to get Bob out of the difficult location, but maybe they don't feel like they're in the strongest location to actually win the game and snap. So there's some really interesting things like that. Cons. It's a lot of power to lose to Killmonger. You might be sitting pretty in a location with that +4 and Killmonger could send you flying. They don't even need to play Killmonger at the same location. They just get that 4 power swing. It's a lot to lose to Big Killy, to Big Skilly. Your opponent can cause potential havoc by snapping and causing a move. So whilst you can control some element of Hydra Bob moving, your opponent has that same control over him, which is very interesting. This is a very interesting card. And he can block locations and might cause awkward interactions where you want to snap but you can't risk him moving. So an example of that could be your opponent played blindly into bar with no name, and you know that you can now win the game because they've fucked up that location and they don't have any like location manipulation. So you would normally want to snap, but if you snap, it risks your Hydra Bob going in there. There will be awkward situations like that, not least Bob simply blocking locations. So yeah, again, as I keep saying, it's a very interesting card. In terms of the counters, we have already spoken about Killmonger. As I said, it's going to be a huge swing. So yeah, be warned, be careful of those skilly Gs. And Kingpin. Of course, Kingpin has just been buffed to a 1 energy card. So he's more popular than ever. He's just generally very good. And he's certainly the best he's ever been, just because you could just stick him in anything as a random tech card now as well. So he's going to be more popular than he ever has been. Ever has been if I'd hammer in the morning. Yeah, so just be careful of the Kingpins, guys. Let's talk about the other key synergies and some cool deck ideas, though. As I said at the start of this video, creating these slides caused me to put up Hydra Bob's... Actually, I don't know if I did say it in this video. I filmed like 3 videos back to back. Basically, creating these slides made me put up the star rating for Hydra Bob that I did in the star rating video. Because I just got some spicy stuff here. So some of the other key synergies. We've already spoken about Miles. I think this is really cool because in the past, getting that final turn extra value Miles... Like, do you remember that old sort of value dump deck which had like Stature and Miles... and you were playing out lots of high value cards on the final turn? You usually had to like set up that final turn via a moving Jeff or something on the penultimate turn. Now with Hydra Bob, you can actually set that up just by snapping, so that's pretty cool. Other synergies here, Craven, of course, the move synergy, moving in and out. Have we spoken about Cerebro? Yes, we did. We did speak about Cerebro very gently in the intro. I feel like I'm sinking down into my chair. Sorry, hang on. Yeah, Cerebro, going to be an interesting one. I think this new C4 deck is going to be really interesting, so we'll speak about that in a minute. But also, a massive thing that I've not touched upon yet. Hydra Bob is an absolute priority gainer. He is going to gain you priority, and I think that might be the most interesting thing about him. So I've got 3 cards here that all absolutely feast on having priority, and that is Cosmo, Negasonic, and Eliath. Eliath himself has just had a big buff as well, going up to 610. He feels incredible at the moment. But I have to say, I've been playing a sort of priority trap deck, which we'll look at in a minute with my Hydra Bob version. I've been playing this priority trap deck, and guys, it absolutely slurped up cubes for me. I literally played games in a row. I had like 8 cubes, 4 cubes, 4 cubes, and I like lost 1, 8 cubes, 4 cubes. It was like the best run I've had in probably months. It was during the Eternals arc, hot location period. So there was a little bit of that, of like knowing where they were going to play. However, Cosmo and Mystique, I'm telling you guys, a Mystique that has copied Cosmo is as invisible as Echo. The amount of times I saw opponents play their stuff into my Mystique Cosmo location, it was absolutely crazy. But these cards, just alongside Negasonic and Eliath, shutting down everything, you know, forcing them into one location and then shutting them down with Eliath, absolutely sick, guys. So, I'm really sorry, just need to have a quick sip of water. Let's talk about this Cerebro 4 deck that I've got for you. We've got cards in here that can gain 4 power, like Hawkeye and like Havoc. The slight thing you need to be careful the thing you need to be careful about with this deck, though, is that it does have cards in here that can generate more than 4 power, like Havoc and like Thena. So it might seem like a strange inclusion to feature Thena in a deck where you only want to trigger her once, whereby playing those 2 cards. But you can manipulate it fairly easily because of the cards in this deck. There's not many turns you're going to be playing more than 2. Or, sorry, there's not many turns you're going to be playing exactly 2, I should say. So it's about choosing your time. You've also got Sarah in the deck as well, so that's hopefully going to be your turn 5 play. And it'll allow you a lot more flexibility on the final turn. You can get down your Cerebro, Mystique, and then something like a Cloak and a Havoc, and you absolutely skyrocket in power. And then the actual raw 4 power cards we've got in here, we've got Hydra Bob, we've got Cloak, we've got Kyra, and Ms. Marvel. Now, the Cloak is interesting because you could snap, move Hydra Bob, maybe your opponent snap back as well, but the Cloak is really interesting, especially if you play it later in the game, because it gives you some more agency over moving Hydra Bob. So that's a really nice little call out there. And then the way to play this deck is basically being careful where you're playing things, because having Ms. Marvel in mind and being able to get those extra bonuses. And your energy cost is quite well split, so you shouldn't be in a difficult position in regards to managing and balancing that. And then we've also got just one little note in here is Storm, so that can help you lock down a location. Probably don't put Bob into a Storm's location. You probably want to put something like Kyra, not Kyra, because that'll be 2-3 costs. So maybe Thena and something else, etc, etc. It's fine. I think this could be cool. Is it the best version of Cerebro? Probably bloody not, because I'm not a Cerebro player. Then my next deck idea is move into the bank. So this is a Moon Girl sort of scam style deck. It's got a lot of cards that we want to dump, but it's got a lot of cards that we want to duplicate. So basically you want to find the healthy balance of knowing which cards in your hand you want to duplicate. You want to get out an early Hood, which is going to give you -3, but the good thing about that is that it's going to lose you priority. And they won't necessarily know what's going on, because they might anticipate like an Annihilus or something. So maybe they'll try and fill that location quickly, and you can make great benefits on the fact that they did so. Because at the end of the game, you can, well, on turn 4, you moon, or turn 5, you Moon Girl, you try and move, like you've got loads of cards in here that move. So basically it's going to guarantee that Miles Morales, Spider-Man, is going to cost 1. You've got the duplicated 1 cost card of him. Hopefully you maybe can even fit in Black Swan on turn 5, and then you move a card, blah blah blah, and you've got this hand stuffed full of duplicated cards. So you could have a duplicated Demon, Martyr, and Spider-Man. Those cards alone allow you to drop 12, 24, 34 power. 34 power, you'll fill all of the locations, so you're not worried about Martyr moving. You can even play, 17 power into your hooded location where you got the -3, which of course comes down to like 14 or 15 or whatever. I'm not good at maths. 14, which is still good, and that might be a surprising number that they don't expect you to reach. So there could be some interesting stuff here. I think this one is very interesting. You've also got the Craven synergy in there as well. So all of these cards that you're moving, you're then gaining the extra benefit from Craven, and then you're dumping all of your hand on the final turn for this crazy explosive ending. I think that's very, very cool. Finally, this is my priority trap deck. This is virtually the deck that I'd been playing this week with the Eternals arc. Obviously a few changes here, and I've got Hydra Bob in here naturally. But basically, you gain priority with cards like Hydra Bob and Martyr and White Widow you don't even mind about playing Maximus. It doesn't matter if they have their cards, because so many decks play on reveal. Like almost every deck in the freaking game plays on reveal cards. So it doesn't matter. You play out your Maximus. It doesn't matter they draw their cards. In an ideal world, you want to Cosmo and then Mystique. Like, genuinely, if you can lock down those two locations with what you've done in the opening turns with maybe like the White Widow and the Martyr or the Hydra Bob, you've got priority already. So it doesn't matter too much about the tempo drop on turn 4, because you can gain that back on turn 5 with things like either a White Widow if you haven't played her already, or a Maximus, and a Shanna. Shanna is actually really good with with like Cosmo and Mystique, because it stops things like Blade from triggering, and there's a few other like on reveals that you wouldn't really want to trigger. And I've actually had a lot of fun playing that combination of scattered Cosmos and Shanna. And yeah, so you regain priority, and then on the final turn you just play Eliath wherever you don't have the Cosmos, and it absolutely ruins. I slurped up so many cubes with this style of deck, so I'm really excited to explore this kind of deck more. Unfortunately, I won't be able to play this version with Bobbin, because I know that during this video I've been relatively positive on Bob. In my star ratings video at the start of the season, I gave him 3 stars, so I actually think he's not bad. The problem is the landscape and environment in which he releases. This guy is unfortunately in the middle of some really cool cards this season, some really cool cards next season, and the season after that, the Spider-Man season, is absolutely crazy. So this guy, at this moment in time, in my humble opinion, is not worth the extremely valuable resources that we have. Those limited keys that we get. I don't think he's worth it. However, I think he looks like a fun card. I think he looks like a generally good card. So I wish you luck if you are getting Hydra Bob. I absolutely love him from a character perspective, and the artwork I think is dope. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, guys. If you're new, please subscribe. Trying to power through all those milestones. I'm approaching 1,000 at time of recording, so I'm over the moon that I'm hitting these numbers. But yeah, you can help me reach even further goals. So thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Cheers.